Hey guys, welcome to the Good News Bay podcast, and thank you for joining us today. We have a very special guest for you today, as we have yet another conversation seeking to brighten Bay County one conversation at a time. Today's conversation is with Congressman Steve Southerland, who served 2 terms in Congress.
I did.
2011 through 2014, and then 15.
Yeah.
You have. I'm gonna give a little brief bio, but you've been kind of under the radar for the last period of time, and we've had and enjoyed it. I think
I have.
We've had a few things go on. Had a hurricane. Have had a pandemic. Just a couple things about you, so that the audience would know because we got a lot of people that are new to Bay County. So if they haven't heard the Southerland name or have not seen the faces associated with them, with you guys that way. 4 out of 5 generations involved in the funeral business. Is that right?
We're in our fourth
generation.
Fourth generation. My grandfather started our business, and so we've got our fourth that's in. But we've been in Bay County been in business here 7. So I had a great uncle that had a general merchandise store downtown, Southerland General Merchandise, and so that goes back to the 1870s.
Oh my word!
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember a time that the Southerlands were not in and around and affiliated with families that we went to school with and played baseball with and all those things. I think one really cool thing about this conversation is not just, although it's going to be important, and we'll look at your role as a congressman and some of the information that you can share with us because of that, but I think we're going to bring smiles to lots of faces as they get caught up with some things. And so Steve, as we have this conversation, man, let's just catch up with the family for a second. Yeah. You got 4 girls, and there have been changes in all their lives in a good way. They're transitioning to new phases. Yeah. Tell me about Samantha. Where is she? She's married now. She got your grandbaby. Give me an update on Samantha.
She is. Samantha's the oldest, and she lives in Washington, D.C. Her and Daniel, our son-in-law, Daniel Nobles, they have Sally Wren.
Yes.
Our first and only grandchild right now, and we are so blessed to have Sally Wren coming up on her 2nd birthday. And they live in the same capital city as Stephanie and Patrick McWilliams. They've been married a little over a year now. They got married right before the COVID shutdown of last year in March. Wow. And they're doing really well. They're 2 years apart, Samantha and Stephanie, and they're just doing great in graduate school. Stephanie and Pat are in graduate school in universities there in and around DC. Samantha and Daniel are doing well. He's still with Geico and a regional manager, and Samantha's doing some freelance interior designing, and then Allie is our 3rd.
She came home.
She came home. We're excited about Allie. Her and Josh Hoey are engaged to be married in August, and so that's a fun chapter of our life, Susan's and mine, watching our children fall in love with wonderful men. And so we got the wedding coming up, and then Abby, our baby.
Yep.
Abby is in hospitality and works over in South Walton County, and she sees all the tourism and the growth, the people that have come in here and discovered our area as it relates to tourism. So Abby is single, just out of college a few years, and doing really well. So Susan and I are just are thrilled to watch the girls.
I have seen, both in pictures and a time or two in real life, a grin on your face that I've never seen before whenever I've seen you holding Sally Wren.
Yeah, it's really been an incredible journey. And I know that, and a journey that was really new and fresh to us, because Sally Wren is adopted. And the journey that our family went through with Samantha and Daniel in pursuit of a baby. Sally Wren was born in Indianapolis, Indiana, and just the whole process. I will tell you, there's some it's full of highs and it's full of lows, and you hurt for your children, and you know that they want so bad to be parents.
This is way off script, but I think it's important from a faith perspective.
Yeah.
I know that when I became a dad of a child, I have a daughter and a son, it put a whole fresh perspective in my mind and eyes of what it meant in terms of Christianity.
Oh, yeah.
Like for the father to give up his son.
Yeah.
And in a similar way, the picture of adoption, of choosing.
Yeah.
Choosing your child. That is, it's a beautiful picture of faith.
It is. And I'll tell you, as I read through Scripture, that we have been adopted into the family of God, the choosing of us, adoption has taken on a whole new, as I read it in Scripture, it's taken on a whole new meaning for Susan and I. And watching the kids just get involved in Sally Wren's life and watching her thrive. I've seen her the last couple of days. I was in Washington, D.C. and just flew back in today. And,
fresh off the plane, but I got to spend some good time with Sally Wren as she's growing and developing, so it's wonderful. For those that may not know, you're a Mosley grad.
Yeah.
Troy State.
83.
Yep. I'm a 92 grad.
Yeah.
And so local fella, played a little R.L. Turner baseball.
Played a little baseball down there.
So lots of stories with all that.
I got scars on my elbows and knees from those days. Fantastic neighborhood growing up in Forest Park. Wow.
Before becoming a congressman, I know enough of your story to know that you served in just about every capacity that you could on a local level, in different community organizations, which is cool because you got a lot of perspective, involved with the chamber.
Yeah.
Now having served at the national level, whenever your time in office ended, you reflected some to figure out what was next. And so tell us what you're doing now.
Yeah. Well, listen, my time of community service has just been so phenomenal, and we have benefited so much from that service. We certainly received far more than we have given. Daddy, growing up, he'd always say, you got to pay your civic rent, and so if you're making a living in a community, you got to be taking groceries off the table. You better be putting some groceries on the table, and so we had a great model. Dad was a fantastic model and mentor and taught us how to serve our community, love people, make a difference in the lives of everyday Bay Countyans and other counties in our region. And so I took all that experience with me, was helpful to understand economic issues, to also understand early learning issues, because I worked real hard for 5 years on the Early Learning Coalition and being responsible for early learning for children from birth to 5 in 7 counties, and then having our own children and learning about the things that affected them, and then being in business and taking all that to Congress really was helpful. My run through the chamber was awesome, and being Military Affairs Committee chairman, that really was a fantastic precursor to going to Congress and understanding how important defense was, and then the hurricane, when the hurricane hit, now how important the rebuild of Tyndall Air Force Base is, and how critical the civilian support is on our side of the fence is imperative for the Secretary of the Air Force to look at a project like Tyndall. They want to know that this is going to be rebuilt in a community that loves its military,
right.
And Bay County always has, and so that's been neat. But to your question, since I left Congress, you're right. It was a lot of time of reflection. You'd love to just have life always be about the successes and the victories, but unfortunately, that's not the case. You look back, that's an important part and an exciting part, but really the times that you draw closer to God and try to reset are in the midst of difficult challenges, of losses, of pain, of hurt, and that was the case after my last election, last campaign. You lose a campaign that you poured your whole life into, and you lose by such a small margin, 0.8 of a point. I look back now as I've had time to reflect, and man, God was so wise, and He knew He could see around the corners, and now I look back and go, man, thank you, God, for your sovereign plan.
I was going to ask, one of the questions I was going to ask at some point was, how has your faith sustained you? And I think all of us, whether pandemic or hurricane, there's ups and downs through that are very recent. But no matter, even with that notwithstanding, we all face struggles in life. How has your faith sustained you on this roller coaster journey through before the election? We've seen, I'm just being really candid, but everybody loves Big Steve, right?
Yeah.
And he's gone home to be with the Lord,
Yeah,
spiritual
praise
giant
God.
of a man. We'll have actually, I hadn't told him, but we're going to have Miss Southerland on here in just a minute. But your faith has sustained you through all these things.
Yeah.
How so?
Yeah. The older you get, I'm 55 now, and I was raised with a good foundation, and I think there is no substitute for a good foundation, and to have that established early in the life of a young person. And so I was fortunate enough to have a mom and dad that loved God, and you just had, Joshua 24:15, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And that was just always, on the doorpost of our home. And it wasn't just talked about, it was lived every day. We didn't turn to Christ just on a Sunday, it was every day. And so having that foundation, and then as you go through difficulties in life, you start to realize that firm foundation is unshakable. And it's not about emotion. I mean, it's real. And God never leaves you, and He never forsakes you, and He purifies you, and He makes you stronger. And we need to understand that there were 4 in the fire. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. There was a 4th in the fire, and God is there.
So there's another member of your family that I didn't say anything about, but should have. Susan.
Yeah, well, I mentioned Susan.
Did you?
Yeah, she listen. She's the rock, man. She's the rock.
She likes being in the background.
She does, and
but she's spiritually a rock. She is,
man. She's the rock. She's
one of the coolest memories I have of her was some wisdom she gave me one Sunday after the hurricane.
Yeah.
You guys, your carpet had to be removed from your home.
Yeah.
And we didn't have carpet here at the church for a long time. And she said, "You know what I did at my house?" I said, "What's that?" She said, "I got some paint. And I painted the floor the color I wanted it to be, put my mats back out, and just made the best of it." And I thought, man, what a great attitude about life.
Yeah, she wasn't going to be looking at, Battleship Gray on that gray floor, so she went and got her brown and painted. But Susan, and I'll tell you, I look at, talking about a firm foundation, Susan and I met when we were in first grade, in 1971, and Panama Christian over on 11th Street. And she was raised with a similar foundation and on faith, and then we dated through, our families went to church together, and we dated through, high school and college, and then been married 35 years. And I tell you, man, when you do life God's way, personally and in your marriage and in raising your children, it just works. I mean. We've got a couple millennium of data in, and it just works. And so but Susan and I had we had good models, and it's easier to recreate something when you've seen it.
I've shared what I'm about to with you privately before, and before we call the rest some more of your family in here and talk a little bit about the reopening of the funeral home and those kind of things, I wanted just to take a minute to share with our listeners one of my favorite memories with you. You invited me up to an inauguration, and I got the opportunity to see you representing our community there. And one of the reasons that I felt so strongly about you when you were in office was because, well, one, you grew up down the street from me. A few years apart, but still, you were a voice in D.C. that I felt like I could trust. You also were a voice that I felt strongly believed in the same Jesus that I did. But what I don't know if our viewers and listeners know is that whenever I got an opportunity not only to see a peaceful change of power, not only I remember walking through the park that night at Lincoln Memorial.
I remember that.
But I watched you among your peers tell the Old Testament story about bricks and straw, about the Hebrew people, and you literally, I watched you at work seeking to bring a moral Christian influence into what we know as DC, which is not necessarily a particularly spiritually upright place. And I just want to affirm that. That means a lot to me. I don't know that others know it and see it, but I do. Second to that really spiritual piece was on inauguration night, instead of being at all the galas and balls, because the other side won, so to speak, right? Because you were a Republican.
Yeah.
So sitting in your apartment, eating pizza, watching Braveheart with a congressman from Georgia, talking politics was just really, really cool.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Those
were great memories, and I'm so glad that you took the opportunity to come up, and people need to go visit their nation's capital. I mean, it's a wonderful place, and the history that is there is phenomenal, and so America's story is like no other story of any country in the world. I mean, we are a shining city on a hill.
Yep.
And I think that the American people know best. Not the media, not the politicians, not the capital. American people know best, and when we listen to the American people, and the American people know that this is the greatest country on planet Earth.
Yep.
And that when America is strong, the world is safer.
Well, and we've seen it in Bay County too, but if we're looking at good news, the American people are resilient.
Yeah.
The people in this community have proven their resiliency, and despite the struggles, there's a lot of fight in a good way.
Oh yeah.
In an independent way in America.
I'm always proud to tell people where I live.
Yeah.
And even though I travel, I still have a little work in D.C. that I do. Bay County is my home, and every ticket I buy going up there, it's a round trip because I'm coming home. And it's an amazing place. It has I know George Gonzalez, CEO of the St. Joe Company, talks about how this area has a certain rhythm to it, and he talks about that rhythm, and it is unique. And when visitors come and then they want to relocate here, they get into our rhythm. They don't change it. And if you change it, you won't be here very long, because you're not going to. If you fight it, if you try to change it, you won't be here very long. Because that rhythm is consistent, and it's multi-generational, and it's the cool thing about it is it's not dependent just solely upon people that have been here as long as our family has. It's something that people adopt, and so you can be from anywhere in the world.
Right.
But once you learn about that rhythm, and we talk to our neighbors, we help each other. We it's not about getting knocked down, it's about getting up, and you want to help people around you get up. And so it's a really unique place. It's weather's pretty good too. So,
it is.
And it's a good environment to raise your kids in.
Well, let's take a minute. Let's bring in two more of our special guests.
Yeah.
Mary Sue Southerland, who's the matriarch of the family, and also Allie Southerland. So we are thrilled to have the matriarch of the Southerland crew here, who is Miss Mary Sue Southerland, and we are also excited to have Allie here as well. Yeah, you're both here on purpose and for a reason, so I want to ask you a couple of questions. But in particular, it's really exciting for the family. You guys have just gotten to open back up the 19th Street location. For those of you that don't know a whole lot about the Southerland family, you've heard us already talk a little bit about the generations involved with the funeral business. But Big Steve and you put blood, sweat, and tears into the place over on 19th Street, and y'all have gone through some challenges. And I think part of this is the story. Like there was a fire over in Lynn Haven at the event center, and so you had just gotten that put back together. And I guess just in time in a way, and then now as a result of the storm, y'all had a really tough decision to make about rebuilding or not rebuilding, and you chose to rebuild.
That's right, we did.
And I've seen it; it's turned out beautiful.
Thank you.
There should be some links or something where they can click and go see pictures of how beautiful it is. But I wanted to ask you, the hurricane's been emotional for everybody.
Yes.
But to not be able to be there in that special place with so many, has it been meaningful as a family to get to put that back together and then see it open? Has that been a happy moment?
Very. It took the whole family. It didn't take just one person. And that's the most important thing to me, that I saw my children work together as a family. We've always been family oriented. But more than anything is to see how God's provided. That's the most important thing to me, to see, which could have been a real blow to our family, we just used it as an opportunity to do things that we've been willing to do that we probably wouldn't have done.
Yeah.
Right.
And to better serve the public. And but we managed to work together, the whole family, and bring it back for what it is today, which we couldn't have done with the old building.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
Well, I think one of the things that I truly hoped for in inviting you on the podcast was for people out there, some of whom are your friends, that saw you before the storm and hadn't gotten a chance to see you in a while. I mean, because lots of folks
Right.
of every generation hadn't gotten to get outside. In fact, if we're talking good news, the school said just this week all these mamas are happy because they don't have to
Yes,
send the kids
absolutely.
That's right.
with
Yeah.
the mask, and so we can smile again.
that's right.
But can you smile? Look at that camera right there. And just smile real big for me. They need to.
Here
You gonna
she
make
is.
somebody. That's right. I know about you.
Oh, do you?
Well, I do. I'm fixing to tell you what. One of the things that there's some stuff I don't know, but I know that you were a part of a Bay High class.
Yes.
Was it back in the 50s? Is that
No.
right? 60s?
No, at 1960.
60. I'm sorry. I wasn't way off, but I was off. Here's what I've learned about the classes from Bay High School from way back. They are tight knit.
Yes.
They probably run together
Yeah.
even regardless of whether they're the 60s. But those folks love each other,
Yes,
and you still do life with some of them.
I do.
And so I just thought like I said, I think some of them will watch this, and I think they're going to be happy to see where y'all are now. Tell me a little bit more, because now that the new place is open, and any of you guys can pitch in here, but there's some opportunities you have with what you did. You didn't just patch it back up and put it back together. And so tell us what's new about the 19th Street
Well,
location.
you want to tell it?
You want me to
No, go ahead, Mom.
Go.
Oh, okay.
You and Allie.
Well, we have a children's room, which we had at the other funeral home, but it wasn't as developed, I guess I should say, for the little ones to be in there. During the funeral, the parents, there's windows so the parents can step out of the chapel and go check on the little ones and then go back right into the service. But that's mainly to teach children not to be afraid of a funeral
I
home.
love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we like to think of it as a funeral home, not a funeral parlor.
Right.
You know, and that it's not a place that'll hurt you, we're just there to help you.
Yeah.
And so we have so many little ones in our family, and we
Yep.
just seem to, you know, we think, well, if I can't go, if the little ones can't go, there must be something wrong there.
Right.
It's not a good place to go, and we don't. So we like for the funeral home to be more home-like.
Sorry, I was just
Go
gonna
ahead.
say-
Go ahead.
One other thing, I think personally, the biggest thing that we've done as we kind of see the way that where funeral service is going, is we now have a banquet area in our funeral home just for families to be able to be with their loved ones after services. And so we had our first two. It was a couple weeks ago. Two on one day. Yeah, two on one day. And it was really cool because we were able to call local restaurants here in town and support them. And they just brought their food, and families got to stay at the funeral home and not go back to someone's house to, like, you know, dirty anything up. But they actually just stayed with us. And so not only were we able to serve their families on the funeral side of things, but then to be able to serve them food and drinks and just have them be in that space and feel safe and be together. And one thing that I love about it, and what we did the other week, is I work with, because of the event center, which is what I run, we work with a lady over there who has all these different color linens and table runners. And so last week we had a gentleman who was a really big Alabama fan. So we got white tablecloths with crimson runners, and we had a slideshow.
There are people all out there right now saying roll.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
But we had, and then we have two TVs in there, so they had a slideshow of pictures, and we have surround sound speakers in there to play light
Now
music.
you're talking about the new place, right?
This is the new place, yes. The
I wanted to
funeral
hear
home.
it. No,
Yeah,
yeah.
this is the funeral home. Come check it out. We have coffee for people.
So, two things I want before I forget. I wrote this down here, and I actually thought it was really cool. But y'all's, I think it's the vision statement, but it's we exist to glorify God by touching hurting people with gentle hands, which I think says volumes really just about the approach the whole family has taken. You are very knowledgeable in this, and there's a reason why, because you have been going to school for some of this, which is really cool.
Yes.
You've been handling the event center for a while. Before I forget, though, I called you matriarch. You've got some other kiddos that are a part of all of this.
Yeah.
And even as we talked about your time in service, Steve, I know that Suzanne and Bart have served an incredible role and still do.
Yep.
Yes.
And are down at the 9th Street, 10th Street place, or really probably at both of them.
Yeah.
They're both funeral directors.
Well, and there should be somewhere in here. There should be a picture that has come directly off yours that shows all the whole. I mean,
Yeah.
all the different ones that are involved,
Yeah.
and it's a beautiful update with everybody's roles.
Yeah.
Tim, I want to mention Tim because Tim is in that mix. But Tim has been in the timber business. He's not in the timber business anymore.
Yeah.
There's not any timber, and so, but he's doing well. Stacy's down at the funeral home some.
But all the time.
Yeah, she's full time.
Yeah.
She's full time, and she's excellent in setting up funerals and doing a lot of the paperwork. And then Shane, our youngest son, is there, and he takes care of all the cemetery memorials and stuff like that. And then of course works in the funeral home itself. And
I've seen him around there a lot. He's got a big old heart, doesn't he?
Yes,
Yeah,
he
he
does. He really,
does.
and he loves it. He loves
He
being
does.
with the family, his family, but he also loves dealing with families that have lost loved ones. He's got a tender heart.
Now, before I just want to make sure I give due credit because Tim's a friend of mine. Tim is he's helping manage land and property.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's
He can
Oh,
do
yeah.
that. So
Tim is in his many years of timber. He's doing a lot of land clearing,
Yep.
and they're very involved. And I know the water management projects. There's a lot of water management districts had a lot of trees down all through the different waterways, streams, and rivers. And so he's involved in that process, with the water management district, and so he's staying busy. He's still outside, still on tractors, just
He
a little different.
oh, he's got to be outside.
Oh, he's got to be outside. But he's doing great.
Always.
What I know of your family, it's a loud place, it's a happy place, it's an exciting place.
You've been there.
I have, and I think it's really neat now seeing this time after the storm things being put back together. Now, Allie, part of why I had you come on is, well, one, I'm extremely proud that you, after graduating at Troy, you did come home, and before you got involved in a whole bunch of other stuff, you were helping at the event center, but you were here, like you were at Emerald Coast Fellowship, faithfully, and serving the worship ministry, still are. I'm proud of that. I'm excited about that. But I also know that as the story has rolled on, it's kind of been a sequence of events. I mean, obviously, you've been at the event center, which when we talk about that, that's in Lynn Haven. Y'all, after the fire, there was a fire there.
Yes.
Before the hurricane, it got redecorated.
Yes.
I remember talking with you about making it a multi-purpose space because we did similar things here. What kind of things do you do over there, like at the event center?
I do all kinds of things.
I've seen showers, really pretty runners and table things, whatever it is
So
you're
this
talking
weekend
about.
I have a baby shower on Saturday and a graduation party on Sunday. I had a meeting today for a business here locally. They're doing trainings at our facility, and we'll cater them lunch. Prior to having the banquet hall over at the funeral home, before COVID and before the hurricane and everything, families would actually have funerals at the funeral home, and then they'd come over to the event center for lunches. So, but we do all kinds of stuff: reunions, showers, small wedding receptions. Really anything.
And so now at the new space, you also have banquet space available there.
Yes.
As a pastor, one thing that I will share is that whenever I've officiated funerals, it's really helpful for families to be able to have a meal somewhere other than at home.
Oh, absolutely.
Just
yeah.
because then when they're tired,
they can,
they can leave. Everybody wants to stay and they go to the house.
Exactly.
And that's actually it's a service.
Yeah.
I think it would be important to note that in this process after the hurricane, in fact, let me just say it this way. I remember after the hurricane occurred that Lynn Haven, the city, operated out of the event center.
Yeah.
Did they end up taking shelter there during the storm itself?
Yeah.
Well, the day of the hurricane, literally the winds were still blowing. Everybody's trying to take an assessment of what's happened. We went immediately, me and Tim and Shane, went down to 19th Street, saw that it was totaled, that it was 100% loss. We had 100% roof failure. And so we knew that this was not, that this was a catastrophic event. And the driving from Lynn Haven downtown let me know that this was a catastrophic event. The water was, almost 3 feet high, in Harrison Avenue, and I just saw it was just amazing. And then we got back to Lynn Haven. It took a while to get there with all the down powered lines, and it didn't take long before the Lynn Haven officials came over and noticed that our building, because of the fire, that building was built back to code. Masonry block, metal roof, and it sustained and did well through the hurricane. But City Hall was destroyed. And so the Lynn Haven officials said, look, we need a place. We got to get the city back up. We got to get the city moving again. We got to get water and sewer, and so we did. We co-located the city in our building for 10 days. We slept up front in a big room.
Yeah, our family had
that
one
was our
room.
Family.
The 4 siblings, our families each had a corner.
Yep.
We were like, y'all can
And
go
then-
anywhere but this room.
And we fed,
Yeah.
some days 800 people a day. We cooked, and we brought our cookers, and I know couple days we had 150 foresters from the state of Florida sleeping on our floors, and we were feeding them breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But it goes back to our comments earlier about Bay County. You bend, but you don't break, and you got back up, and everybody worked together, and that was awesome to see.
Yeah.
Well,
And she was right in the middle of it.
Well, and I was going to say,
Being home.
correct
all
me
were.
if I'm wrong, but
Yeah.
partly because the 19th Street facility went down,
Yeah.
the event center ended up handling
Yeah.
Everything.
Oh, yeah.
so much.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
And Allie, in that process, you saw some stuff about how
Yeah.
the funeral business worked.
Yes. So this whole story is really quite amazing how God's been orchestrating all these events since that fire 5 years ago, and how
He's
we
in the
needed.
fire.
He is.
Tell
How
me.
we needed to rebuild, and little did we know that we needed to rebuild because God knew that a hurricane was coming. A few years later. And so, we completely lost 19th Street. Everybody moved in over there, which praise God for having a facility to be able to still serve families. I don't know what we would have done, but so they moved over there. We were still an event center and a funeral home at the same time. We were essentially having services during the week and wedding receptions on the weekend. So we were working around each other a lot, but God was so good through that whole process. He was just faithful, and we got through it. But never in a million years did I think that when they moved over there, I've never been one to really want to go into the funeral service. That's what Dad did while I was growing up. So I've been around it my whole life, but I never have taken to it until the hurricane happened and they moved over there with me at the event center. And I fell in love with funeral service. I got to a point where I was like, I started to feel like I was like, okay, I think this might be the path that God wants me to take. But I wasn't going to say anything to my dad or to anybody because I knew if I said something that they were going to take it. Yes, and so I was really quiet about it for a while, and I was just like, God, surely this is not what you want me to do. But it's crazy. Like I would pray about it, and then the next day, I would have an encounter with a woman who just lost somebody, and would just have sweet conversation and just really feel for them and just have this desire to love on them. And I was like, you know what? Like I love this, and so I went to my dad and my Aunt Sue, and I said, I think this is what I want to do. And so I yet again followed in his footsteps. I went to Troy, got a degree there, and now I'm at Jefferson State where he went. And I'm in school right now, and I'll finish in May, and I'll be the 4th generation coming in as a funeral director, licensed funeral
That's
director.
exciting. So no wonder you know
excited.
so much about what's going on over there.
But I will say this: you talked about purpose, and I just really believe God created all of us for a purpose.
Yep.
And unfortunately, we live in oftentimes a non-purpose, an off-purpose world.
Yeah.
Even inside the church, we find people that never connect to the purpose in which God put inside of them. And so what we did years ago, we went through a purposing exercise, and we really started analyzing why we as individuals existed. And so that our purpose statement, that we exist to glorify God by touching hurting people with gentle, healing hands. That's why we exist. And it's not for us, it's to exist for the God who put us where he put us. And so Allie got a chance to see that for the first time, not just to observe from afar, but to be in the trenches, glorifying God by touching hurting people with gentle, healing hands. And it's magic if it's done right.
It really is.
One of the, you are a young lady, okay? So like you're not a child anymore, obviously, but the younger generation, and one of the things I'm learning, we all need to do something that's just big. It's not just about sustenance and finances.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so when you find a calling,
Yeah.
it's something that you can do because you know that it's bigger than you.
Exactly.
Right? The care that you give matters. It's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing to see. So
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons it's
Thank
excited.
you.
It's neat to see you finding that
Yes,
pathway.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I'm ready to be done with school so
Now-
I can just
Well,
go.
On a really good news note, I gotta bring Josh up. Okay?
Yes, please do.
Because we heard it in the intro. I see pictures of Disney trips, and I see pictures on your social media of the beautiful showers and all that stuff that y'all throw. But lately, there have been a bunch of really gooey pictures with engagement
Yes,
and a
yes,
guy
yes,
named
yes.
Josh Hoey.
Yes.
And so, are you excited to be engaged?
Oh, I am. Man, it's been the sweetest. It's been the sweetest thing I've ever experienced. Yes, I'm very, very excited. We're getting married in August, and he's been so supportive through. I was always nervous. I was like, gosh, I mean, I'm gonna tell somebody that I'm going to school to be a funeral director, and you never know how someone's gonna take that. You just really don't. But he's been amazing through it all, and we got to know each other through the church, and he's amazing, and we're so happy. So yes, I'm very excited.
Sweet.
Very
That's
excited.
exciting. That is good news.
Good news.
This is, I'm going to let this be kind of the conclusion of this first part of this two-part conversation that we're going to have. And I know I want to look in the second part at a bunch of the local information, Steve, that you're going to be able to bring in hand. But what a neat thrill to get to catch up with the Southerland crew and family and see some bright smiles
Thank you
and
for
a bright
having us.
future. I love
Thank you.
seeing multiple generations at play. It's great stuff. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Thank you for listening to our podcast today. If you were encouraged by the good news, we would ask you to subscribe through Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Podcast, as well as YouTube. If you will subscribe, all new content will come your way. You'll get notified of it, and it'll help us to brighten Bay County. Thanks, guys.